The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow across the ballroom as Elena Rodriguez carefully balanced a tray of champagne glasses. She'd been working at the Sterling Club for 3 years now, and nights like these had become routine. Well, as routine as serving billionaires and celebrities could ever be, tonight was different though. Tonight was the annual charity gala, the biggest event of the year. Women wore gowns that cost more than Elena's yearly rent, and men casually discussed business deals worth millions between sips of vintage wine. Elena moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling glasses and clearing plates, present but invisible. She didn't mind being invisible. In fact, she preferred it. At 28 years old, Elena had learned that staying under the radar made life easier. Do your job well, collect your paycheck, and go home. That was the plan. That had always been the plan since everything fell apart 5 years ago. As she walked past the stage, her eyes caught on the grand piano, sitting there like a sleeping giant. It was a Steinway, probably worth more than everything she owned combined. The polished black surface reflected the chandelier light. And for just a moment, Elena's fingers tingled with muscle memory. She quickly looked away and hurried back to the kitchen. Table 12 needs more wine, her manager called out, barely glancing up from his clipboard. And make sure you smile, Elena. These people are paying top dollar tonight. She nodded and grabbed another bottle. Smile. Always smile. Even when your feet hurt from standing for 6 hours straight. Even when someone snaps their fingers at you like you're a dog. Even when you're dying inside because you're 28 and this wasn't supposed to be your life, but it was her life now, and she'd made peace with that. Mostly, Elena had grown up with music. Her father had been a piano teacher, nothing fancy. Just a man who loved Chopin and Beethoven and believed that music could heal anything. He'd started teaching her when she was 4 years old, her tiny fingers barely reaching the keys. By the time she was 16, she was winning competitions. By 18, she'd gotten into one of the best music schools in the country. Her father had cried when she got that acceptance letter. Happy tears. Proud tears. He'd worked double shifts to help pay for it, even though she had a partial scholarship. You're going to be great, Mia, he'd told her. You're going to play in concert halls around the world. But life had other plans. 3 months into her second year, her father had a heart attack. Sudden, massive, fatal. One day he was there, humming Mozart while making breakfast, and the next day he was gone. Just like that. No warning. No goodbye. Elena had dropped out immediately. Her mother was a wreck, barely able to function. The medical bills piled up despite his passing. The funeral costs. The mortgage. Someone had to work, and Elena was it. Her younger brother was still in high school. Her mother couldn't even get out of bed most days, so Elena got a job. Then another job. Then a third job. She waitressed, she cleaned houses, she did whatever it took to keep the family afloat. The piano became a memory, something she used to do in another lifetime that was 5 years ago. Her brother had graduated now, working as a mechanic and helping with bills. Her mother was better, functioning at least, working part-time at a grocery store. They'd managed to keep the house. They'd survived. But Elena's dreams had died with her father. She'd thought about going back to school, of course. Late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she'd look up music programs online. She'd calculated the costs 100 times. She'd even started saving, putting away whatever she could spare each month. At this rate, she might have enough to go back when she was 40. Maybe, double quotes Elena. Stop daydreaming and move. Her manager's voice snapped her back to reality. She rushed to table 12 with the wine, her professional smile firmly in place. The guests barely acknowledged her as she poured. They were too busy laughing at some joke about their private jets. Elena finished pouring and turned to leave when she heard it music. Someone had turned on the sound system, filling the room with a recording of piano music. It was Debussy, Clair de Lune. Elena froze mid-step, the empty bottle still in her hand. She knew every note of this piece, had played it herself 1,000 times. Her fingers moved slightly, unconsciously following along with the melody. Excuse me, are you going to stand there all night? Elena blinked and realized she was blocking someone's view. Sorry, so sorry, she muttered, and hurried away, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Get it together, she told herself. This is not your world anymore. The evening continued in its predictable rhythm. Serve, smile, clear, repeat. Elena's feet ached in her practical black shoes. Her back hurt from carrying heavy trays. But she kept moving, kept smiling, kept being invisible. Around 9 o'clock, the room's energy shifted. People started whispering, looking toward the entrance. Elena glanced up from the table she was clearing and saw why Gregory Thornton had arrived. Everyone knew who Gregory Thornton was. Real estate billionaire. Self-made, as he liked to remind everyone. His face was on magazine covers, business shows, social media. He was worth something like $10 billion, though the numbers seemed to change depending on which article you read. He was also famous for something else. Something that made every service worker in the city nervous when his name appeared on the guest list. Gregory Thornton enjoyed making people squirm. He had a reputation, whispered about in break rooms and staff meetings. He'd once fired an assistant for bringing him the wrong brand of water. He'd sued a restaurant because his steak wasn't cooked to his exact specifications. He'd publicly mocked a valet driver on social media for scratching his car. Even though the scratch had already been there, the man was brilliant at making money and equally brilliant at making people miserable. Elena watched as he made his entrance. Shaking hands and kissing cheeks, his smile wide and his laugh loud. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her car, and his watch caught the light every time he moved his wrist. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. She turned back to her work, hoping to stay off his radar entirely. In her experience, the best way to deal with people like Gregory Thornton was to be so forgettable that they never noticed you existed. But tonight, luck wasn't on her side. She was assigned to the section that included his table. Of course. Of all the sections in the ballroom, of course, she got his. Just be polite and efficient, her manager whispered as she picked up the tray. Don't mess this up, Elena. He's donated $500,000 to this charity. We can't afford any problems. No pressure or anything. Elena took a deep breath and headed toward Gregory Thornton's table, her smile fixed in place, her hand steady on the tray. She could do this. She'd served difficult guests before. She'd handle it professionally, disappear into the background, and get through the night. She had no idea that in the next hour her entire life was about to change, that the grand piano sitting silent on the stage would become her salvation, that the man currently laughing at his own jokes would try to destroy her, and that she would find a strength she didn't know she still possessed. All she knew in that moment was that her feet hurt. She had 4 more hours left in her shift, and she really hoped Gregory Thornton wouldn't notice her at all. Sometimes hope isn't enough. Elena approached Gregory Thornton's table with her tray of appetizers, moving carefully through the crowded ballroom. She could already hear his voice from 10 feet away, loud, commanding, the kind of voice that expected everyone to listen. If you can't handle the pressure, get out of my boardroom, Gregory was saying to the group around him. They all laughed on cue, though Elena noticed some of the laughs sounded forced. She waited for a pause in the conversation before stepping forward. Good evening. May I offer you some appetizers? Gregory didn't even look at her. He waved his hand dismissively. Just put them down and bring me a scotch. The expensive one. Not whatever cheap stuff you're probably pouring for everyone else. Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her smile. Of course, sir. I'll bring that right away. As she turned to leave, she heard one of the women at the table say something about the decorations being lovely. Gregory snorted. Lovely? Please. I've seen better decorations at a children's birthday party. But what can you expect? The coordinator probably hired the cheapest vendor she could find. Lena hurried away, grateful to put distance between herself and that table. She'd dealt with rude guests before, but something about Gregory Thornton set her nerves on edge. Maybe it was the way he talked, like everyone around him was somehow less than human. Or maybe it was the way people laughed at his insults like they were compliments. She got his scotch from the bar, making sure it was the top-shelf bottle. The bartender, Vincent, gave her a sympathetic look. Thornton table? How'd you guess? You've got that look. Like you're preparing for battle. Vincent poured the drink carefully, Just keep your head down. He usually gets bored and moves on to the next target. Lena wished that made her feel better. She carried the scotch back to Gregory's table, weaving through the other guests. The ballroom was packed now, everyone in their finest clothes, talking and laughing. The charity auction would start soon, and the energy in the room was building. She placed the scotch in front of Gregory. "Your drink, sir?" This time he looked at her, and Alina immediately wished he hadn't. His eyes were cold, calculating, like he was sizing up a business deal and finding it lacking. "What's your name?" he asked. Alina hesitated. Something about the question felt like a trap. "Alina, sir." "Alina," he repeated, rolling her name around like he was testing it. "Tell me, Alina, how long have you worked here?" 3 years, sir." 3 years. He picked up his glass, swirling the scotch. "And in those 3 years, have you learned anything about proper service?" Her stomach dropped. "I try my best to provide excellent service, sir." Gregory smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Try. That's an interesting word. Do you know what I tell people in my company? I tell them don't try. Just do. Trying is for amateurs." People at his table had gone quiet. Alina could feel their eyes on her. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. "That'll be all," Gregory said, waving her away like she was a fly. Alina retreated, her face burning. She knew she shouldn't take it personally. People like Gregory Thornton probably treated everyone that way. But knowing that didn't make it hurt less. The next hour was busy. Dinner was served, courses coming out of the kitchen in a carefully timed dance. Alina focused on her other tables, checking on drinks, clearing plates, doing her job. She managed to avoid Gregory's table entirely, letting another server handle his requests. But then it happened. Alina was across the room, clearing dishes from table 7 when she heard the crash. The unmistakable sound of glass shattering, liquids splashing. The entire ballroom went quiet. Hundreds of conversations stopping mid-sentence. She turned, and her heart sank. Gregory Thornton was standing at his table, red wine dripping down his expensive suit. His white shirt was stained crimson. His face was twisted in rage, and he was pointing directly at her. "You," he shouted, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Get over here right now." Alina's mind raced. She hadn't been anywhere near his table. She'd been on the opposite side of the room. But every single person in the ballroom was looking at her now, waiting. Her legs felt like lead as she walked toward him. The distance seemed endless. She was aware of everything. The clicking of her shoes on the marble floor, the rustling of expensive dresses as people turned to watch, the feeling of hundreds of eyes on her back. When she reached his table, Gregory's face was inches from hers. She could smell the scotch on his breath. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he hissed. "This suit cost $15,000. $15,000. And you just ruined it." "Sir, I wasn't. Don't you dare contradict me." His voice got louder. "I watched you bump into my table. I watched you knock over my wine glass. And now you're going to stand there and lie to my face?" Alina's mind was spinning. She knew she hadn't touched his table. She'd been nowhere near it. But as she looked at the faces around her, she saw doubt. People were looking at her like she'd done something wrong. Because why would Gregory Thornton lie? He was a billionaire. She was just a waitress. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "Let me get you some towels." "Towels." Gregory laughed, but it was a cruel sound. "You think towels are going to fix this? Where's your manager?" "I want to speak to whoever's in charge of this disaster." Alina's manager appeared almost instantly, his face pale and sweaty. "Mr. Thornton, I'm so terribly sorry. Please, let me. Do you know how much I've donated to this charity?" Gregory interrupted. $500,000. "And this is how I'm treated? By incompetent staff who can't even walk through a room without causing destruction. I assure you, we'll handle this immediately," the manager said. He shot Alina a look that made her stomach turn. Alina apologized to Mr. Thornton. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thornton," she said quietly. "Louder," Gregory demanded. "I don't think everyone heard you." Alina felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of all these people." "I'm sorry, Mr. Thornton. You know what I think?" Gregory said, addressing the crowd now like he was giving a speech. "I think people like this don't belong in establishments like this. Look at her. Does she look like she has the education, the background, the class to work here? I doubt she even finished high school." Someone in the crowd gasped. Alina felt the words hit her like physical blows. She wanted to tell him she'd been accepted to one of the best music schools in the country, that she'd had to drop out not because she wasn't smart enough, but because life had dealt her an impossible hand, that she worked 3 jobs just to survive and still managed to put money away for her dreams. But what was the point? He wouldn't listen. People like Gregory Thornton never listened to people like her. "I want her fired," Gregory continued. "Right now, in front of everyone. That's the only way this establishment can prove they take service seriously." Alina's manager looked like he might faint. "Mr. Thornton, please. Perhaps we could discuss this privately?" "Privately?" Gregory's voice dripped with disdain. "So you can sweep it under the rug?" "No. I want everyone here to see that actions have consequences." Alina stood there, frozen. This was it. She was about to lose her job in the most humiliating way possible. Her mother depended on this income. Her savings for school? Everything was about to crumble because one billionaire decided to entertain himself by destroying a waitress. The ballroom was completely silent. 200 people watching her public execution, and then like a miracle, a voice crackled over the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption." It was the event coordinator, and she sounded panicked. "We have a situation. Our scheduled pianist, Maestro Chen, has been delayed. His flight was canceled due to weather. He won't make it tonight." A ripple of disappointment went through the crowd. The charity auction depended on the ambience. Without the music, the whole evening would fall flat. "If anyone at all, has piano experience and would be willing to perform for us tonight, please see me immediately. We're desperate." Alina's manager gripped her arm. His voice was urgent, barely a whisper. "You play piano? I remember from your application. You studied music." "It was years ago," Alina said. Her heart was pounding. "I don't care if it was decades ago. Please, if we can save this event, maybe Thornton will forget about ... this." Alina looked at the wine-stained suit. Alina looked at the stage. At the grand piano that had been calling to her all night. Then she looked at Gregory Thornton, who was still smirking, still enjoying the show. And something inside her shifted. Something that had been buried for 5 years suddenly woke up. "I'll do it," she said. The words hung in the air between Alina and her manager. "I'll do it." She couldn't believe she'd actually said them out loud. Her manager's eyes went wide. "You're serious? You can really play?" Alina nodded, though her heart was hammering so hard she thought everyone in the room could hear it. "I studied for 2 years at conservatory. But I haven't performed in front of anyone since her father died. Since everything fell apart. Since she packed away that part of herself and decided it was safer to be invisible." "I don't care if you haven't played in 10 years, her manager said, gripping her shoulders. "Right now, you're our only hope. Go quick, before they cancel the whole auction." Alina looked down at herself. She was still in her waitress uniform, black pants and white button-up shirt, both slightly wrinkled from hours of work. Wine stains on her sleeve from earlier in the evening. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. This wasn't how pianists were supposed to look. "I can't go up there looking like this," she said. "Can and you will. Now go." Alina took a shaky breath and started walking toward the stage. Every step felt surreal, like she was moving through a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. She could feel people staring at her. The same people who'd just watched her get humiliated by Gregory Thornton. The same people who'd probably agreed with him that she didn't belong here. The event coordinator met her at the base of the stage steps. "You can play? Really?" "Yes, thank God." The coordinator looked like she might cry from relief. "What's your name?" "Alina Rodriguez." "Okay, Alina Rodriguez. Can you play for about 45 minutes? Nothing too complicated." Just nice background music for the auction. Familiar pieces that people recognize. Alina almost laughed. Nothing too complicated. If she was going to do this, if she was really going to walk up on that stage, she wasn't going to play it safe. I'll play, she said. But I'm going to play what I want to play. The coordinator blinked. Okay. Sure, whatever works. Just please save this event. Alina climbed the steps to the stage. The platform felt massive, stretching out under the lights. The Steinway piano sat center stage, gleaming and perfect. Her hands were trembling as she approached it. Behind her, she could hear the coordinator at the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we're thrilled to announce that we have a pianist for this evening after all. Please welcome Alina Rodriguez. The applause was polite, scattered. Most people were probably just relieved the evening wasn't ruined. Alina sat down at the piano bench and immediately heard Gregory Thornton's voice carrying across the room. Oh, this should be good. The clumsy waitress is going to play piano. What's next? Is the janitor going to perform surgery? Laughter rippled through his table. Alina felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't turn around. Instead, she adjusted the bench height and let her hands hover over the keys. 5 years. It had been 5 years since she'd touched a real piano. She had a cheap keyboard in her apartment, something she'd picked up at a yard sale for $50. The keys stuck sometimes, and the sound was tinny and fake. But it was all she could afford and on her days off. When her mother was at work and her brother was out with friends, she'd play. Quietly. Always quietly. So the neighbors wouldn't complain. But this wasn't a cheap keyboard. This was a Steinway. The kind of instrument she'd dreamed about owning someday. Back when she still let herself dream, her fingers touched the keys and she felt something electric run through her. The piano was perfectly tuned. The keys were smooth and responsive. This was what a real instrument felt like. She closed her eyes for just a moment. In her mind, she could see her father sitting beside her during lessons. Music isn't about playing the notes correctly, he used to say. It's about telling a story. It's about making people feel something they didn't know they could feel. Lena opened her eyes. The ballroom stretched out before her, 200 people in expensive clothes, eating expensive food, living expensive lives. People who thought they knew everything about her just by looking at her. Uniform. She'd show them what a waitress could do. Alina began to play. She started with Chopin. Nocturne in E-flat major. It was one of the first advanced pieces her father had taught her. She remembered struggling with it, getting frustrated when her fingers couldn't keep up with what her mind wanted to do. But her father had been patient. The music will wait for you, he'd said. Keep trying. The first notes floated through the ballroom, soft and delicate. It was a gentle piece. It's the kind of music that sounded like moonlight. Would sound if moonlight could sing. Elena's fingers moved across the keys and 5 years of waitressing. Of exhaustion, of suppressed dreams fell away. For the first time since her father's funeral, she felt like herself again. The room had gone completely quiet. Not the uncomfortable silence from earlier when Gregory was yelling. This was different. This was the kind of silence that happens when people are holding their breath. Elena's eyes were half closed, seeing the music more than the audience. Her body swayed slightly with the melody. This was what she'd been missing. This connection, this feeling of being completely present in a moment. Of channeling something bigger than herself through her fingertips. The Chopin piece was supposed to be background music. Pretty and pleasant, the kind of thing you could talk over. But the way Alina played it, it commanded attention. She added subtle variations, little emotional touches that made the familiar melody feel new. She played some passages softer than written, making people lean forward to hear. Other passages she made more intense, pulling the emotion out of every note. When she finished the Chopin, there should have been applause. But the room stayed silent. People were transfixed, waiting to hear what would come next. Alina didn't give them time to break the spell. She immediately moved into Debussy. Clair de Lune, the same piece that had been playing on the sound system earlier. But this wasn't a recording. This was live, and it was completely different. Her hands danced across the keyboard. The melody washed over the room like waves on a beach. Debussy was all about creating images, painting pictures with sound, and Alina painted a masterpiece. You could almost see the moonlight reflecting on water, could feel the peaceful loneliness of a quiet night. She glanced up briefly and saw faces she'd been serving all evening. A woman in a silver dress had tears running down her cheeks. A man in a tuxedo had stopped mid-bite, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. Even the other wait staff had stopped working, standing along the walls with trays in their hands. Watching, and then Alina saw Gregory Thornton's face. He wasn't smirking anymore. He looked confused, like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. How could the waitress he'd just humiliated, the woman he'd tried to get fired, play like this? Something fierce and powerful rose up in Alina's chest. She'd been playing it safe, staying with pieces that were beautiful but comfortable. But she wasn't here to be comfortable. She wasn't here to make these people comfortable. She was here to show them exactly who she was. The Debussy ended, and without pause, Alina launched into Rachmaninoff. Piano Concerto? No. 2. Specifically, the third movement. One of the most technically demanding pieces in the classical piano repertoire. Professionals spent months preparing this piece. It required strength, speed, precision, and passion all at once. Alina's father had helped her learn it when she was 19. "This piece is too advanced for you right now," he'd said. "But you're stubborn like your mother, so I know you'll master it anyway." He'd been right. She'd practiced for 8 months straight until her fingers ached and her back hurt from sitting at the piano for hours. But she'd mastered it. And now, 5 years later, with no rehearsal and no warm-up, she was playing it again. Her hands flew across the keyboard. The music was powerful, dramatic, full of cascading notes that seemed impossible for one person to produce. The piano seemed to shake with the intensity of it. Alina's whole body was engaged, swaying with the rhythm, her face showing every emotion the music demanded. This wasn't background music. This was a performance, a statement, a declaration that she existed, that she mattered, that she was more than the uniform she wore or the job she did to survive. The technical difficulty of the Rachmaninoff was obvious even to people who knew nothing about classical music. Her fingers were moving so fast, they blurred. The chords required her to stretch her hands to their limit. The dynamics went from whisper soft to thunderously loud in seconds, and she played it. Flawlessly, Gregory Thornton's face had gone pale. The people at his table weren't laughing anymore. They were staring at the stage like everyone else, completely captivated. Alina could feel sweat on her forehead, could feel her arms starting to tire from the physical demands of the piece. But she didn't stop. She poured everything into it. Every frustration from the last 5 years, every dream she'd buried, every time someone had made her feel small or invisible or worthless. She played it all out. And the piano sang with her pain and her strength, and her refusal to stay silent anymore. The final chords rang out across the ballroom, powerful and triumphant. And then there was silence. The silence lasted for 3 heartbeats. Alina sat at the piano, her hands still on the keys, her chest rising and falling from the exertion. She'd given everything she had to that performance. Every ounce of emotion, every bit of technique she'd ever learned, every dream she'd been forced to put aside. And now the room was completely silent. For a terrible moment, Alina thought she'd made a mistake. Maybe she'd played too aggressively. Maybe classical music wasn't what these people wanted. Maybe they'd expected simple background music and she'd given them a full concert performance instead. Then someone started clapping. It was a single person at first. Somewhere in the back of the room, slow, deliberate claps that echoed through the silent ballroom. Then another person joined in. Then another. And then the entire room exploded. People leapt to their feet so fast that chairs scraped against the floor. The applause was deafening, crashing over Alina like a wave. She stood up from the piano bench on shaky legs, and the sound got even louder. People were shouting. Some were crying openly. The woman in the silver dress who Alina had noticed earlier was sobbing into her hands. While she clapped, Alina had never experienced anything like this. Even in her competition days, even when she'd won first place, The applause had been polite and measured. This was different. This was raw and real and overwhelming. She gave a small bow, unsure of what else to do. The applause continued. People weren't stopping. Someone shouted bravo, and others picked it up until the whole room was chanting it. Elena's eyes scanned the crowd and landed on Gregory Thornton. He was still sitting down while everyone around him stood. His face was blank, almost frozen. The wine stains were still visible on his expensive suit, a reminder of what he'd done just 20 minutes earlier. But he wasn't smirking now. He looked like a man who'd been hit with something he didn't see coming. The event coordinator rushed onto the stage, her face flushed with excitement. She grabbed Elena's hand and raised it in the air like Elena had just won a boxing match. The crowd roared even louder. "Ladies and gentlemen," the coordinator shouted into the microphone, "Elena Rodriguez." More applause. More shouting. Elena felt dizzy from it all. This morning she'd been worried about making rent. An hour ago she'd been facing unemployment and public humiliation. And now this. It didn't feel real. Finally, after what felt like forever, the applause began to die down. People returned to their seats, though they kept looking at the stage, at Elena. Like they couldn't quite believe what they'd witnessed. Elena started to walk off the stage, her legs still trembling. But before she could reach the steps, people swarmed her. A man in an expensive suit pressed his business card into her hand. "I manage concert pianists," he said breathlessly. "We need to talk. Tonight." A woman in a red dress squeezed through. "I'm organizing a charity event next month. We'll pay you whatever you want. Name your price." More business cards. More offers. Elena's manager appeared at her elbow, looking stunned. "Elena, I had no idea. I mean, I knew you studied music, but I didn't know you were ... this." She didn't know what to say to any of them. It was too much, too fast. She'd spent 5 years being invisible, and suddenly everyone wanted to see her, to talk to her, to hire her. Someone touched her arm gently. Elena turned and saw an older gentleman with kind eyes and silver hair. He wasn't pushing or shoving like the others. He simply waited for her attention. "That was extraordinary," he said quietly. "Truly extraordinary. I'm Richard Chen. I'm the director of the Steinway Society." Elena's heart skipped. The Steinway Society was legendary in the classical music world. They provided grants, instruments, and opportunities to promising pianists. She'd dreamed about their programs back in her conservatory days. "I'd like to talk with you," Richard continued. "Not right now, clearly. But soon. I think we could help each other." He handed her his card. Unlike the others who'd been practically throwing theirs at her, his gesture was calm and respectful. "Thank you," Elena managed to say. "I'd like that." Richard smiled and stepped back, letting the crowd surge forward again. Elena's head was spinning. She needed air. She needed space to process what had just happened. She pushed through the crowd as politely as she could, making her way toward the edge of the ballroom. The other servers were staring at her with expressions ranging from amazement to jealousy. Vincent, the bartender, gave her a subtle thumbs up and mouthed, "Holy cow." Elena found a quiet corner near the service entrance and leaned against the wall. Her hands were still shaking. She looked down at them, at these hands that served food and carried trays and cleared tables. These same hands had just played Rachmaninoff, had just received a standing ovation from 200 wealthy patrons, had just possibly changed her entire life. Quite a performance. Elena's stomach dropped. She knew that voice. She turned and saw Gregory Thornton standing a few feet away. Up close, the wine stains on his suit looked even worse. His $15,000 suit, ruined. The suit he'd blamed her for. "Mr. Thornton," she said carefully. He looked uncomfortable. Good. He should be uncomfortable. He'd tried to get her fired in front of everyone. He'd insulted her intelligence, her background, her worth as a human being. "I suppose I owe you an apology," Gregory said, though his tone suggested he wasn't used to apologizing for anything. "You suppose?" His jaw tightened. "Look, I may have overreacted earlier. About the wine. Things got heated. Alina felt anger rising in her chest. Things got heated? That was his excuse? You accused me of something I didn't do. You tried to get me fired. You insulted me in front of everyone. And now, you may have overreacted. I said I'm apologizing, didn't I? Gregory snapped, his old arrogance creeping back. What more do you want? Alina took a step closer to him. She was tired of being small. Tired of letting people like him make her feel worthless. I want you to understand that what you did was wrong. Not because I turned out to be a talented pianist. It would have been just as wrong if I couldn't play a single note. Gregory stared at her. You judged me based on my uniform, Alina continued. You assumed that because I served tables, I must be uneducated, unworthy, less than you. But you were wrong. And the scary thing is, you're probably wrong about dozens of people every single day. How many talented, intelligent, worthy people have you dismissed because they didn't meet your narrow definition of valuable? His face had gone red. You can't talk to me like this. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, Alina said quietly. You're a man who thinks money gives you the right to treat people badly. You're a man who gets entertainment from humiliating others. You're a man who's so insecure in his own worth that he has to tear other people down to feel superior. Gregory looked like he'd been slapped. People nearby had started to notice their conversation, were watching with interest. You can keep your apology, Alina said. I don't need it. But maybe you should think about why you felt the need to treat me that way in the first place. Because whatever demons you're fighting, they have nothing to do with me. She turned and walked away, leaving Gregory Thornton standing there in his wine-stained suit. Speechless for probably the first time in his life, Alina's manager intercepted her halfway across the room. Alina, that was incredible. The performance, listen, about your job. Am I fired? Alina asked bluntly. What? No. God, no. Are you kidding? After what just happened? The club owner already called me. He wants to discuss having you perform regularly. With a significant pay increase, obviously. Alina blinked. Perform regularly? Piano performances during our weekend dinners. Maybe some special events. You'd still work some serving shifts if you want. Or we could transition you to performance only. Whatever you prefer. It was tempting. So tempting. Regular performances meant regular money. Better money. And she'd be playing piano. Which was what she'd always wanted. But Alina thought about Richard Chin's card in her pocket. About the other offers she'd received. About possibilities she hadn't dared to imagine just an hour ago. Can I think about it? She asked. Her manager looked surprised but nodded. Of course. Take your time. Just ... Please keep working with us in some capacity. Tonight proved you're special, Alina. Really special. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. The charity auction went off perfectly, with people bidding even more generously than expected. Several guests approached Alina to compliment her playing or request her contact information. Her phone, which she'd left in her locker, was probably exploding with messages by now. When her shift finally ended at midnight, Alina changed out of her uniform and walked outside into the cool night air. The city was quiet at this hour, the streets mostly empty. She stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the stars barely visible through the light pollution. Her father would have been proud. She could almost hear his voice. See, Mia? I told you music was in your soul. It was just waiting for the right moment to come back out. Alina pulled out her phone and wasn't surprised to see dozens of notifications. Text messages, missed calls, even emails somehow. But one message caught her attention. It was from an unknown number. This is Richard Chen from the Steinway Society. I meant what I said tonight. I'd like to discuss a full scholarship to complete your music degree, plus potential performance opportunities. Please call me tomorrow. You have something truly special, Alina. The world should hear it. Alina read the message 3 times to make sure she wasn't imagining it. A full scholarship. Performance opportunities. Everything she'd given up 5 years ago, suddenly possible again. She thought about Gregory Thornton's face when she'd confronted him. About the standing ovation. About her hands on that beautiful Steinway piano, for the first time in 5 years. Alina let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, her dreams weren't dead after all. They were just waiting for her to be ready to chase them again. Alina didn't sleep that night. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the ballroom, heard the applause, felt her fingers on those piano keys. She lay in her small bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Richard Chen's message glowing on her phone screen beside her. A full scholarship. The words felt impossible. She'd spent 5 years convincing herself that her music career was over, that she'd made peace with being a waitress forever. And now, in one single evening, everything had changed. But a small voice in the back of her mind kept whispering doubts. What if it was a fluke? What if she'd just gotten lucky? What if she called Richard Chen tomorrow and he'd changed his mind? At 6 in the morning, Alina finally gave up on sleep. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table, the cheap keyboard she'd bought at a yard sale sitting in the corner of the room. 5 years she'd practiced on that thing, playing quietly so the neighbors wouldn't complain. It suddenly seemed like such a sad substitute for a real piano. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then didn't stop buzzing. Alina picked it up and her eyes went wide. Her video had gone viral. Someone at the gala had recorded her performance on their phone. Not the whole thing, just the Rachmaninoff piece. They'd posted it online with the caption, "Waitress fills in for missing pianist and destroys Rachmaninoff." This is what raw talent looks like. The video had been shared thousands of times overnight. Tens of thousands of views. The comments section was exploding. "I'm literally crying. This is beautiful. She plays better than most professionals I've seen in concert halls. The way she puts her whole body into it. You can feel the emotion. Anyone know who she is? I'd pay to see her perform." Lena's hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments. People were asking about her, wanting to know her story, demanding to know where they could hear her play again. Then she saw the other comments. The ones about Gregory Thornton. Someone had posted a longer video, one that showed the wine incident and Gregory's cruel words. The internet had done what the internet does best. They'd found out who he was, and they were not happy. This is disgusting. Imagine treating someone like that billionaire bullies working class woman, and then she shows him up. Poetry. Gregory Thornton should be ashamed of himself. She has more class in her little finger than he has in his whole body. The story was spreading fast. News websites were picking it up. Billionaire's humiliation attempt backfires spectacularly. Waitress's piano performance goes viral. After rich patron's cruelty, Gregory Thornton under fire for treatment of service worker, Lena set down her phone, feeling overwhelmed. This was spiraling into something much bigger than she'd anticipated. She just wanted to play piano. She hadn't meant to start an internet firestorm. Her mother knocked on her bedroom door. "Mia, you're up early?" "I thought you got home late last night." Lena opened the door. Her mother stood there in her bathrobe, concern written across her face. "Mom, something happened." Something big. She told her mother everything. The humiliation, the performance, the offers, the video, all of it spilling out in a rush. Her mother listened without interrupting, her eyes growing wider with each detail. When Alina finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled Alina into a tight hug. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. "He always knew you were special. Always knew you'd find your way back to music." Alina felt tears sting her eyes. "But what do I do now? Everything's happening so fast. I don't know if I'm ready." "Oh." Her mother pulled back and looked her in the eyes. "You've been ready for 5 years. You just needed the world to catch up. Call that man from the Steinway Society. See what he's really offering. And Alina, whatever you decide, know that you earned this. Not because you got lucky. Because you're talented, and you worked hard, and you never gave up. Even when everything was against you." At 9 o'clock sharp, Alina called Richard Chen. Her hands were sweating as the phone rang. "Alina?" he answered warmly. "I was hoping you'd call. Have you seen the video?" "Everyone's seen the video," Alina said with a nervous laugh. "Then you know that your life is about to change dramatically. The question is, are you ready for it?" They talked for an hour. Richard explained that the Steinway Society wanted to sponsor her education completely. Full tuition, living expenses, even a stipend for books and materials. In exchange, she'd perform at their events and represent the society at various functions. After graduation, they'd help her book performances and build her career as a concert pianist. But here's what I need you to understand, Richard said seriously. This isn't charity. We don't do charity. We invest in talent. And you, Alina, are worth investing in. That performance last night, that was something special. Raw, emotional, technically brilliant. You have what most trained pianists spend their whole lives trying to develop. I don't know what to say, Alina admitted. I'd say you'll think about it. Take a few days. Talk to your family. But Alina, don't let fear make this decision for you. I've seen too many talented people give up because they were afraid of success. Don't be one of them. After they hung up, Alina sat in silence. Her brother came home from his morning shift at the garage, grease still on his hands. When he saw her face, he immediately knew something was up. What happened? Is Mom okay? Mom's fine. It's me, I think. I think my life just completely changed. She showed him the video, the offers, everything. Her brother watched in amazement, then grabbed her in a headlock like he used to when they were kids. My sister, the famous pianist. I'm telling everyone at work. Don't, Alina laughed. I haven't even decided what I'm doing yet. What's to decide? This is what you've always wanted, but what about Mom? What about the bills? I can't just stop working. Her brother rolled his eyes. Alina, you've been taking care of us for 5 years. 5 years. Don't you think it's time you took care of yourself? Besides, I make decent money now. And Mom's working. We'll manage. We always do. Over the next few days, the story continued to grow. More videos surfaced from the gala, different angles of her performance. News outlets requested interviews. Her inbox was flooded with offers from concert halls, event planners, music schools, and Gregory Thornton was suffering the consequences of his actions. His company's stock had taken a hit. Sponsors were pulling out of his projects. He'd issued a public apology, but it felt hollow and forced. I deeply regret my behavior at the charity gala. I allowed my frustration to overcome my better judgment. I'm committed to learning from this experience and treating all people with respect. The internet wasn't buying it. Neither was Alina when she read it, but something unexpected happened 3 days after the gala. A handwritten letter arrived at Alina's apartment. The return address was from Gregory Thornton's office. Alina almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity won. The letter was short, written in actual handwriting, not typed by an assistant. Alina, I know you have no reason to believe me, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know that what you said to me that night has haunted me every day since. You were right. I've spent so long at the top that I forgot what it was like to struggle. I forgot that every person I interact with has a story, has dreams, has worth beyond what they can do for me. My public apology was for my reputation. This letter is for you. I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. I hope you pursue your music career. The world deserves to hear you play, and I deserve to remember the lesson you taught me. I've made a donation to the Steinway Society in your name. It's the least I can do. Gregory Thornton. Alina read the letter twice. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it felt more genuine than his public statement. Maybe people could change. Or maybe he'd just learned to fake sincerity better. Their way, it didn't matter. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about her. On Monday morning, Alina called Richard Chen back. I'm in, she said. I want to accept the scholarship. I want to finish my degree. I want to play piano professionally. She could hear the smile in Richard's voice. Excellent. We'll start the paperwork immediately. Welcome to your new life, Alina. Alina gave her notice at the Sterling Club. Her manager was disappointed but understanding. You were always too talented for this place, he admitted. Go show the world what you can do. 3 months later, Alina stood backstage at a small concert hall. It wasn't Carnegie Hall, not yet. But it was a real performance, with real tickets sold to real people who'd come specifically to hear her play. She wore a black evening gown, her hair styled professionally. But underneath the fancy clothes, she was still the same Alina, who'd served champagne and cleared plates and practiced on a cheap keyboard in a tiny apartment. The stage manager gave her the signal. Alina walked out to the piano, and the audience applauded. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and let her hands hover over the keys. She thought about her father, about the sacrifices her family had made, about the 5 years of struggle and doubt. She thought about Gregory Thornton in his wine-stained suit, about the moment she'd decided to stop being invisible, and then Alina began to play. The music filled the concert hall, and Alina knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The journey had been hard. The road had been long. But every struggle had led her to this moment, to these keys, to this music. She'd been a waitress who played piano. Now she was a pianist who'd once been a waitress, and that made all the difference. The audience listened in rapt silence as Elena's fingers danced across the keys, telling her story without words, proving that talent doesn't care about your job title, or your bank account, or what someone else thinks you're worth. Talent just waits for its moment to shine, and Elena's moment had finally come.